So we're going to talk a little today about centering prayer, and then we're going to leave enough time to do the practice, because this is a morning practice session, not a morning talk about practice session. So I want to say a few words, and what I'm basically going to do is just give you enough information to get you up and running in the practice if you're a newcomer to it, and plant a few seeds that I'm going to reap a little bit later when we have the 2 p.m. panel on interbeing. So hopefully if you don't hear things that come out as fully digest paragraphs yet, this is a trailer, okay? So centering prayer has been my meditation practice for approaching 40 years now. It's a very simple form of non-conceptual meditation in the Christian tradition that was put together in the 1970s by my teacher, Thomas Keating, and some of his Trappist brethren at St. Joseph's Abbey in Spencer, Massachusetts. And I would say that they put it together in close association and with a lot of help from their interspiritual friends who were just then, Thomas was just then beginning to really lock arms with interspiritual awakening and realize that the other great traditions of the world were all reaching forward and out to each other to bootstrap and help. And with the help of particularly people in TM and a couple of Roshis he was working with already, they set to take the essence of the Christian tradition, contemplative tradition, and put it in a modern meditation format that would be accessible, particularly to lay people working in the world. So that's what they did. Centering prayer has been flourishing ever since. So in some ways it's very traditional, and in one way it's distinctly untraditional. Like all sort of basic beginning meditation practices, the goal is to put a stick in the spokes, between the spokes of that constant, incessive, repetitive mental thinking, the monkey mind, as the Buddhists call it, which keep us chained to our habitual reactions and chained to our usual sense of self. So Thomas likes to refer to it as take a brief vacation from yourself. So it does. It allows you some simple methods to just get out of that squirrel cage, which is usually our life. But centering prayer does it in a way that's slightly untraditional. Most meditation practices will begin by giving you a simple object to tether your attention on or to tether it in. Like you pay attention, you bring your attention to your breath, or to a mantra, or to something that steadies it so that the thoughts can't take you off because your attention is always lightly following the focus. So that's traditional. The gateway into meditation is traditionally seen to be through single point awareness. And that's quite so, it works. But that's not what centering prayer is up to. Centering prayer works on the back end. It starts by recognizing that we are going to get caught by thoughts, and it really works to help you release them once you get caught. So a thought in centering prayer is anything that brings your attention to a focal point. It can be actually a thought, a piece of conceptual work, but it can also be a hum in the air, an itch on your nose. But if you start thinking about it, that's a thought. And what centering prayer teaches you to do is to simply let them go. So it's a meditation practice whose whole method is repeated, gentle release. And this is quite untraditional in ways. As a matter of fact, it's so low-key that a lot of people don't even know that anything's happening, because we're not trying to create a desired mental state or hold our mind at a certain sort of preferred state of clarity or anything like that. It simply is, when you catch yourself thinking, you let the thought go. That's centering prayer. So the real thing to consider as you do it is, what is the meaning of this continual practice of releasing, releasing, releasing? And it's often continuous, you know. I remember one of the classic early centering prayer stories where a very, very sort of type A nun was trying this prayer for the first time, and at the end of the 20 minutes of meditation, she said to Thomas Keating, you know, in 20 minutes I've had 10,000 thoughts. And he said, how lovely. 10,000 opportunities to return to God. So each of these times that we catch ourselves thinking and release is a pathway of return. And once you really begin to see what's up, you begin to understand how this prayer works, its kind of magical effects. The first thing that it does is that we're working directly, I call it almost non-clinging or non-attachment in meditation form. We're actually working directly with a practice which is considered to be the gateway into a different kind of consciousness in all the traditions. Non-attachment, they all say. Non-clinging, non-hanging on. In Christianity, it's called kenosis, emptying, which St. Paul recognized was the essence of the mind of Christ. I like the word that my dear and late departed friend Kathleen Singh put to it. It's a prayer of unbinding, unbinding, releasing, releasing, and releasing. So we practice in meditation form what is the core gesture in life that gets us out of our habitual, violent, reactive patterns into the possibility of actually surviving in a more spacious environment. We practice it in meditation. We pattern in non-clinging, unbinding, considering it the essence of prayer. And this is something that can actually be measured and experienced not just as an attitude, but physiologically as well. That most people experience that when they let go of a thought, when they release it, even if another one comes right back in, that's okay. There's a feeling of freedom and a drop sometimes to a deeper place in self, which can actually be physically felt and neurologically followed. A different pathway through the brain gets activated, a different relationship between brain and heart as you drop deeper. So I'm not going to push this now because I promised you it's not a lecture, but I think we have here, people are actually beginning to work with what the Eastern Orthodox Christian tradition called the greatest desideratum for actually changing our mode of consciousness, our way of being present. They said, you must put the mind in the heart, you must put the mind in the heart, you must put the mind in the heart. And only then will you begin to see rightly. Will you begin to access what in the classic Christian tradition contemplation was really all about. It wasn't about resting in God. It wasn't about emptiness. It was about entering a sphere of enormous presence, of a knowing impregnated by love, as they called it in the tradition, of such a high order and intensity that it just drowns and overwhelms the usual mental faculties. But it's not an absence, it's a presence. And with the mind in the heart, one can learn to bear the beams of this love, to thrive in it, to orient it, and to right oneself in it. So for me, centering prayer is gateway practice in meditation form into the beginning steps of putting the mind in the heart, opening the door of your own heart to the kind of luminous seeing and gateway to the perception of unity that we're going to talk about this afternoon in the panel. Okay, enough of a talk. 3 brief instructions, and then I'm going to launch us all into centering prayer with a song that Paulette's going to sing the song. I'm going to comment on it. That First of all, in centering prayer, since we don't have a focus for attention, intention is everything, says Thomas Keating. It's one of his famous mantras. Intention is everything. And our intention in this time of meditation or prayer, however you're comfortable languaging it, is to sit in the presence of this intimate other. And without thoughts, without responses, without reactions, without commentary, without even having to hold on to a felt sense of I am here. Just be. And so that's the intention, just to be open, to be available, to be, as Thomas Keating loved to say in one of his final beautiful quotes, he says, when silence meets presence, there we have contemplation. So it's to sit in this presence in whatever form it takes. So how do we put teeth in this attention? Well, very simple. If you catch yourself thinking, you let the thought go. And don't worry, you don't have to set up a 360-degree radar screen so that no thought gets in. Thoughts will come. And guaranteed that if you intend to do this practice at least once or twice, you'll notice your thinking. At that point, very lightly let go of whatever you're thinking about. Just to enjoy and relish the act, the gesture of letting go. Not in order to clear the space so that God can enter. God can enter in noise as well as in silence, but to practice the gesture of letting go. And finally, in centering prayer, we often use something called a sacred word, which just serves not as a mantra, something we pay attention to and repeat, but as a way that we actually put it into our unconscious, and it comes up out of there to remind us of our intention and help us to realize quickly when we've gotten caught by a thought. So you may have a word already. If you've been doing centering prayer, you certainly do. You can use a certified religious word like God or Jesus or Mary Magdalene or Spirit, a short phrase, be here, trust, love, open, anything that you choose that will sort of remind you that what we're doing right here is to sit in the presence. So as we go into this, I've asked Paulette to sing one of my very favorite of these chants, which encapsulates this whole motion beautifully. It talks about, you'll hear him talk about, give over thy own willing, thy own running, thy own desiring. Give over, that's the kenosis, that's the unbinding part. And sink down to the seed which God sows in your heart or in your soul. Paulette will know which one it is. But so you're getting the letting go, the unbinding, the sinking down, and then you'll hear it talking about something taking shape and growing in that silent sinking. Something as yet unknown, but immensely more alive and true, so that the silence becomes a nurturing ground for a new kind of way of seeing and being and perceiving and entering into the great web of this oneness that we've come here this week to celebrate, proclaim, and make a little bit more manifest. Anyway, over to you, my dear.
This is a quote from one of the early 17th century Quaker founding leaders, Isaac Pennington, and he was particularly attuned to the deep mystical presence.
Why don't you sing it twice, too, just so?
Sorry?
Sing it twice?
Okay.
Okay.
Give over thine own willing, give over thine own running, give over thine own desiring to know or be anything, and sink down to the seed which God sows in thy heart. And let that be in thee, and grow in thee, and breathe in thee, and act in thee, and thou shalt find by sweet experience that the Lord knows that, and loves and owns that, and will lead it to the inheritance of life, which is God's portion. Give over thine own willing, give over thine own running, give over thine own desiring to know or be anything, and sink down to the seed which God sows in thy heart. And let that be in thee, and grow in thee, and breathe in thee, and act in thee, and thou shalt find by sweet experience that the Lord knows that, and loves and owns that, and will lead it to the inheritance of life, which is God's portion.
And so we sit. Get yourself ready in whichever way you like to do it. And we'll be sitting for about 15 minutes. May I ask you all to stand silently. And bring your attention to your feet, the soles of your feet pressing so firmly against the ground. Sense the life flowing through your body. Taste deeply the energy gathered and still in this room right now. Where silence meets presence, there is contemplation. And as we move out about our day, my hope is that we can bring still a living remnant of this field that's been collected by our hearts in training together into the world and into the proceedings of this conference as a measure, an actual taste of what it is that we're pointing at in every session that happens today. So please, if you can, leave in silence, making a conscious act to remember and hold this taste. And once you get through the doors, then you can talk. And you can also buy books and CDs of beautiful music. We'll meet you out there. Thank you so much, and God bless.